Okay, what's going on, guys? It's Chill back again with another tier list video. It's a nice rainy, moody day here where I'm at. Just figured I know some people don't really like the tier list videos, but I don't know. For me personally, I've always thought they were a pretty efficient way of getting a lot of quick but broad points about whatever topic you're talking about out without, having to hyper focus on slick editing and all these other time consuming things. So whenever I drop like a big video, like I just dropped the Boondock season 3 video, that was one of the longest videos I've ever done, most extensive videos I've ever done. I like to just chill with a nice, more relaxed video after that. So that's why you're getting this, and this is going to be a tier list ranking every episode of Samurai Champloo from best to worst on the tier list system. And just for the sake of, I guess, simplicity, I just merged all of the double part or triple part episodes together into one, seeing as technically you can consider them as one episode. So if you don't know, Samurai Champloo it is my favorite anime of all time. The Boondocks is my favorite, animated show of all time. But then Samurai Champloo, if we're just talking strictly true anime, that's my favorite. And as I've said before in different videos, they're very similar. Boondocks took a lot of inspiration from Samurai Champloo. So yeah, it just kind of makes sense that this would also be one of my favorite things ever. But yeah, just to get started with the ranking, the first episode we have here is an episode that I've actually made a video about, and the title of the video was The Best Episode of Samurai Champloo. So just to, not be a liar, not be a fraud, I'm just going to go ahead and put it at number 1. And that episode is Gamblers and Gallantry. If you don't know this episode, this is the one where Jean meets a woman on a bridge on a rainy day, basically falls for her instantly. She falls for him instantly too. They have like a nice romantic day out, eating fish, getting to know each other. But then it turns out at the end of the night that was her last night of freedom, and she has to be sold into sex slavery the next day to pay off her husband's debts. And then the rest of the episode is mostly just Jean trying desperately to see her, and then trying to save her from that life of servitude. It's one of the only like true love stories in Champloo, and I'm not like a big love story kind of guy usually, but I do think this was done really well. And it was the first episode where we really got to get more of an insight into Jean and like the type of person he really is, because Jean is always the most like guarded and introverted. Yeah, he's the most guarded and introverted member of the trio. So it's really cool to see, a more of his actual emotional side and sensitive side, things like that. Also, I mentioned in the video, the best Champloo episode ever video that I made, that this is one of the first times you see that the characters, Fu, Mugen, and Jean, really do care about each other outside of just their goal of reaching, finding the Sunflower Samurai. Like they actually do want to protect each other. Like when Fu and Mugen run to Jean's aid after he says that he's going to leave to, be with the woman that he fell in love with, they run to help him and protect him from any danger he might be facing. So yeah, just in my opinion, this is the best episode ever. But still other episodes that are very close on that level. Also, one other thing I want to say and make sure is clear, I guess, before we go any further is, so Samurai Champloo, amazing show. I don't think there's a bad episode of Samurai Champloo, right? Like we have the tier list, we have like S, A, B, D, C, we have S, A, B, C, D, like we have all these tiers. But even if I put something in C tier, D tier, it's not saying it's bad. It's just saying that like, oh, it's in comparison to all these other amazing episodes, it's just all right? Like it's just kind of not quite on those episodes level. But yeah, none of these episodes are bad, even close to being bad. And the next episode on the list here is the Disorder Diaries, and this one is really just a glorified like recap episode. There's like very small amounts of original content in this episode. It's mostly just Mugen and Jean find Fu's diary and then decide to read it and see what she said about the journey. And this is, I believe it's the midway point. So it's just like recapping everything that's happened. A lot of anime back in the day used to do these kind of episodes when, you know, everything was airing weekly on television, just to catch people up who maybe had missed an episode or two. It's nostalgic for that reason, but it's definitely like I'd say a D tier. This is probably one of the only D tier episodes, and it's not because it's a bad episode. It's just not really a true full episode, right? There's very little full content other than, you know, Mugen and Jean kind of talking about, like, they'll read something in the diary about an episode, previous episode, and then they'll kind of like remark like, oh yeah, that was kind of interesting, blah blah blah, but it's not really anything to really talk about further than that. But the next episode is something to talk about, and surprise surprise, it's another episode that I have made a whole video about, and that is Misguided Miscreants, and I called this the most tragic episode of Samurai Champloo ever. And I think I have conflicting feelings about this episode. It's basically it's a 2-part episode that is about Mugen's backstory, with the 2 people on Ryukyu's island, and I want to love this episode. I want this to be an S tier episode because it has some of the most iconic and amazing moments in the history of Champloo. Like that whole, in the part 2, the opening of part 2, that's like a 6-minute sequence of this like very just crazy sounding like Japanese traditional like just death song. Like I don't know how to describe it better than that. It's playing in the background while Mugen is, you know, like going almost like passing on into the afterlife or trying to, you know, fight death. And it's one of the most memorable things in the entire series. It's just that my issues with this episode is just things don't fully connect and make sense, like how Mugen is really connected to the brother and sister Koza and Mukuro, but it's really good. It's just I wish it kind of was better because it's like halfway through the show that you get this episode that finally reveals Mugen's backstory, and it's kind of like what could it be? Like you're thinking like what could have made this man the way he is, and then the answer that you get is somewhat satisfying, but I feel like it leaves some things out. For now, I am going to put it in S tier. I think it has that enough iconic and great moments that I would put it in S tier. And the way it ends with Mugen, you know, killing Koza's potential boyfriend and escape from her misery to leave her in misery, and then he just like walks off without even looking back at her. Like, yeah, it's got too many good moments to be anything other than S tier, at least at this point. And then the next episode is probably one of my favorite filler episodes, I guess you could call them. I don't know, Champloo has this weird thing where clearly there are certain episodes, like the multi-part episodes, that are meant to be like the main like meat and potatoes of the story. But then they'll have these like kind of one-off filler episodes that are more like comedic, and sometimes you can't even tell if they really happened or not, or if they're just like kind of non-canon stories. And yeah, I really like Bogus Booty. I think it's one of the funniest Champloo episodes. I think, see, this is the thing, I like it so much. I don't know if I could put it S tier, because at the end of the day, I think so much of what makes it great is just the comedy of it, and it doesn't really have much of the other aspects of Champloo that I love so much, like either the great subtle emotional moments or like the crazy. It does have a crazy fight scene at the end too. I think for now I'm going to put it in A tier, but I could definitely see, maybe at the end of this I'll look back and review and just make sure that I have everything in the right place. It might move up to S tier, but for now, Bogus Booty, A tier. And next we have another 2-part episode, Lullabies of the Lost. This one's probably S tier. Rokuro is one of the best, one-time characters in the show. He's not really a villain, but he's definitely one of my favorite, just kind of like one-off characters that they made. He's got a great story. I love his interactions with Mugen and Fu. Really great episodes. It's kind of weird. It feels almost, I feel like most of the 2-parter episodes or the multi-part episodes are very like integral to the story and the plot. The only real thing we get from this episode is just further explanation about Jean and his backstory with I forget his name, but like his young rival, I guess, from his days as a samurai. in training, and the whole storyline of Gene and his dojo, killing his dojo master and having all of the members of the dojo trying to kill him. Yeah, that was all that was great. Yukimaru, I think that was his name, Yukimaru. Yeah, everything in this episode is really great. I really love the part where Mugen confronts Okuro, and he's talking about like the song he's playing. It's just like, yeah, we're from two different places, but we both know that song, and just how things connect people, and that's like such a huge theme of the show. Yeah, definitely S tier. I definitely put it over the Misguided Miscreants episodes. Yeah, then we have War of the Words next. This one is definitely one of my least favorites. I don't know if it's like D tier bad. I'm gonna say bad again. This is all comparative. It's all good, but comparative to like Lullabies of the Lost and Misguided Miscreants and like other episodes, I just feel like it's kind of not that great. Like whenever I rewatch the show, this is one that I'm never that excited to rewatch. I guess it's got funny moments. I guess Mugen being taught how to read and write by that one crazy drunk that they meet in the bar is probably the best, like the highlights of the episode. Mugen in general is the highlight of the episode. But for now, I think I'll put it in C tier. It's not as like unnecessary and forgettable as the recap episode, but it's definitely one of my least favorite episodes of the show. And then from there we go to another one that I'm not that crazy about. I think it's still a good episode, but just not as good as some of the others, and that's Unholy Union. Unholy Union is probably also C tier. I think it's maybe I think it's a step behind War of the Words, just because War of the Words at least has the goddamn, my voice is going. War of the Words at least has the great comedy with Mugen's side of the story, whereas Unholy Union is more of a serious, depressing episode. The only comedy you get is just from how ridiculous the fake Christian villain in this episode is. It's got some good messages about like the dangers of religion and false prophets and things like that, and it's also, I think this is the episode, I believe, where we confirm for sure that, or Fu confirms that her father is a sunflower samurai that the crew was trying to find. So I mean, it's got some story relevance. It's explaining like the I'm not saying indoctrination, but explaining the underground Christian movement in Japan at the time and how integral that is into the story. So it's definitely important, which makes me maybe want to put it over War of the Words, but they're pretty much equal in terms of how I feel about them. They're probably like C tier episodes in comparison to everything else. And the next episode is probably one of the most memorable and iconic, Elegy of Entrapment, with the blind assassin Sarah with the whitest name ever. These episodes, 2-part episodes, are S tier, 100%. This was one of the few times in the show where it really felt like the characters were cooked, right? Like it felt like, what are they going to do against this woman? She's stronger than them. She's smarter than them. She's seemingly, unstoppable. They also have a connection to her, so they might not want to hurt her. Sarah is probably one of, if not the best villain in the show. She's definitely up there. I have a video planned. I want to talk about and like just analyze all of the villains in Champloo through all of the 26 episodes. And she's definitely one of the most interesting and most, I guess, tragic stories of all the villains. But yeah, the episode's definitely S tier. I think in this 2-parter versus Lullabies of the Lost is tough. Like, which one of these is better? For now, I think Lullabies of the Lost just has more to it. Like the Sarah, the Elegy of Entrapment episodes are more hyper focused on like one aspect of the show, where I feel like if you watch Lullabies of the Lost, you get a more full picture of everything that the show is. Like it encapsulates more of the themes of the show. But I don't know, they're both amazing. So yeah, they're definitely S tier episodes. And then we have Cosmic Collisions, and this is 100% probably the most weird episode of the show, and the most like different in terms of, one, I mentioned earlier about like sometimes you can't tell if episodes really happened or not. It's definitely on that level where it feels like it's all an illusion or hallucination, or didn't just some all non-canon filler story. But also like the vibe of it is very like a Halloween type of episode. I don't even know if the Japanese Halloween is a big thing in Japan, but it feels like some kind of like scary like horror special episode. But I like it. It's a fun episode to go through, especially late in the show when you're like getting up to that, you know, that final climax, and it's just like, all right, before we get there, here's just some weird kind of off kilter to hit you with. But I think it's a step above, just off of the weirdness of it. It's a step above War of the Words and Unholy Union. So I think I put it in B tier. It's a solid B tier episode. And then we have Baseball Blues, which I remember the first time I watched it, I wasn't like super crazy about it. But it's really grown on me over the years. And it's one of the episodes that the Boondocks pays homage to, pretty much like a 1-to-1 recreation of it. And that's always earns points for me. So it's, as far as filler episodes go, I feel like it's one of the better ones, and I think it's definitely better than Cosmic Collisions. So I think I'll put it in A tier. It's like right below Bogus Booty. Yeah, definitely just like a very interesting idea for an episode. And I'm glad that it's kind of like the last filler episode before we get to, you know, the true ending of the show. And speaking of the ending of the show, the next episode is the finale. I think it was Evanescent Encounters. I'm so bad at pronouncing things sometimes. Evanescent Encounter, yeah. Part 1, 2, and 3. The only 3-parter episode of the show. The finale is S tier. Easy S tier. I love the ending of this show. It's one of the best endings of anything I've ever seen. Just how everything comes together in the end in terms of what they've, like the breadcrumbs they've given you about each character's past, and how they've like gradually shown more and more just like what the greater picture of everything in this journey that they're taking is and what it represents. And how it all comes together with they face the strongest villain they've ever faced. They all have to come to terms, all have to come face to face with their pasts, and the mistakes of their past, the trauma of their past. Yeah, it's incredible. So many great moments. I mean, Gene, there have been very few, like rare moments in my life watching anime or any other kind of entertainment where something I see makes me like physically react. Like I jump out of my seat, start like pounding my chest, pumping my fit, like going crazy. Watching Gene walk over that hill, hair flowing, shirt open, after I thought for sure he was dead, but to fight the big bad samurai guy. Oh god, and the music that plays, I think it's called Same Old Thing by Force of Nature. That theme with like the sweeping strings, it's so perfect. It's one of the best moments I've ever seen in anything ever. So yeah, finale is definitely S tier. I think I'd even venture to say that the finale is better than any other episode that comes before it, other than Gamblers and Gallantry. And I know I made the whole video about it being the best episode, Gamblers and Gallantry, but the finale, just because it's just it's 3 episodes as opposed to 1, it might be better. I might have to retract that statement of Gamblers and Gallantry being the best episode, and the finale might be the best. Yeah, I think I'll put that over. The 3 episodes of the finale are better than the 1 episode of Gamblers and Gallantry. So sorry about being a fraud in my previous video, but and then we go from literally the last episode, the ending, to the beginning, the first episode. And the first episode is S tier. It's one of the best opening episodes that I've ever seen for anything. It perfectly introduces you to the vibe of the show that you're about to watch, the characters, like what type of characters you're going to be interacting with, or how the characters are going to be interacting with each other, and just the crazy serendipitous wild that happens in this story, and how everything is just nonstop, either action or just interesting captivating moments on screen. Like whether it's like a really subtle emotional moment or just like a crazy balls to the wall fight, or just like really good comedy. Because I think Samurai Champloo, what really makes it great is the combination of like great serious moments, great action and fighting, a unique style and look, but also it just is also really funny. It's one of the it's legitimately one of the funniest anime I've ever watched. And that's all on display in the first episode. So that has to be S tier. And I think I'd put it over Misguided Miscreants too. And then we have an episode that I feel really, really strongly about, but I don't think everyone else does. I think I'm kind of in the minority on how much I love this episode. But it's Red Eye Reprisal, which is the second episode of the show. And I talked about how much I love the first episode. I think it's an amazing intro. And I think the first episode was enough to get me interested, right, when I first watched the show. But what really hooked me, and I remember this so vividly, was watching the second episode. And the second episode is not as good as the first, right? Red Eye Reprisal, the first 90% of it is not as good as the entirety of the first episode. But the moment at the end where Onigawara, the like Frankenstein monster kind of character, sacrifices himself or allows Mugen to kill him because he doesn't want to be a monster anymore, which is a great moment. And then Fu, who was trying to, console him and make him see the error of his ways the entire episode. Her consoling him at the end and him saying like, oh, you were the only one who didn't think I was a monster, blah, blah, blah. And the Firefly that had been shown constantly through all the episodes, right? All this stuff is great, but like the song that drops at the end of this episode, I wish I knew the name of it. I'll probably put it on the screen when I find it after this, but that moment when that song drops after he makes that like beautiful speech, I remembered like my ears perking up and I was just like, wait, this show is actually just different. That was when it really hit me, like, I'm watching something that like I really, really am gonna connect with. And that moment is probably what hooked me in the show. Like the first episode had me interested. Was that Django line with the Leonardo DiCaprio? Just like, at first you had my interest, now you have my attention, or whatever the order of what he says is. But that's how I felt with that episode. So this episode I'm also going to say is S tier. I'm not like so biased that I would put it over like Lullabies of the Lost or Gamblers and Gallantry, but I think it's definitely in one of the best episodes of the show, just for that moment alone. And then the next episode is Hellhounds for Hire. And Hellhounds for Hire is the first two-parter episode, and I believe it's the third and fourth episode of the show. So this is right after the first episode and Red Eye Reprisal. So I was like locked in after Red Eye Reprisal, and I remember watching this episode, these two-part episodes. I'm like, it's all like, it feels like it's missing something, right? Something that all of the other two-part episodes have. Like there's no just completely so memorable, hard-hitting, and impactful moment from these episodes. It's kind of like the show was still trying to figure out what it was and like get the formula down at this point in the show and the show's run. So I feel like I would say, like, I want to say it's A tier, but I think I might go all the way down to B tier. Like I think it's like at the top of B tier. Definitely a good episode. Definitely good moments, like Mugen and the one bodyguard, like their whole tension, and then them fighting at the end because Mugen inspired him to want to live free and not be not be under the boot of anyone, and learning that that's what true power and freedom is. And then him dying by Mugen's hand, so I guess he died a free man. I don't know, like that shit is cool, and just Mugen's whole dynamic with the I guess they were Yakuza. I can't remember the specific like gang or whatever they were. Or I guess they were a gang combating the Yakuza. and how that man thought like, oh, power is controlling others and to get what you want. But Mugen's like, similar to how Mugen's relationship with the bodyguard was like, no, power is being able to live completely free without listening to anyone or having to listen to anyone, which also has its flaws. But I don't know, Mugen spits sometimes, and sometimes I think he's a little too crazy, but this is one where he was definitely on the right side of things. Shinsuke, the little boy, was annoying. I don't know, and it's also there's this running theme of Champloo, which is something else I want to talk about in my villains video that I'm working on now. Themes of people not being able to let go of the past and living in the past, and how like times are changing and you have to learn to adapt with those times, and just like what that mindset of people like that are, right? Because that's pretty much every character. Most of the major characters are people who are stuck in the past or are trying to escape their past, and you know, the old Yakuza member who's like, this is how we always do things, blah blah blah, but the way they do things was causing them to, you know, collapse and be taken over by this, you know, formerly small time gang. But I don't know, clearly I can say a lot about this episode, but at the end of the day I feel like it's just a really good B tier episode. And then we have Artistic Anarchy, which is again I think another solid B tier episode. I don't think it has, it's memorable definitely, and I think that's the first one that starts their whole like history altering thing, like with Van Gogh and like the was it the Ikie paintings, I forget how the Monzo the Saw says it, but and just taking something that's probably slightly true and then like manipulating it to be, you know, more palatable for the show and whatever story they're trying to tell. But this episode's solid. It's Fu getting kidnapped I think this is the first time she gets kidnapped, first or second. It starts the whole trend of that happening. Yeah, it's a solid B tier. Nothing too great to say about it, but definitely nothing bad either. And then there's Strangers Searching. It's the next episode. And this episode is, I think, also another B tier. I think the moments of Fu eating, the food competition is probably my favorite part. As you can tell, maybe by, you know, how I've ranked these and what I've talked about and highlighted, like the comedy aspect of this show is really important to me. And I feel like when they try to be funny and nail it, it's really, you know, it really stands out. So the Fu eating competition against the big Dutch dude, or he's from Holland or whatever he's from in Europe, is probably my favorite moment of the episode. But this is also the episode where we learn about, you know, Christianity being like a major theme in terms of like the Sunflower Samurai, Fu's father, and just, you know, the conflict between Japan and this incurring wave of Christianity that's sweeping through Japan. And I guess, and I don't want to say indoctrinating because like that almost sounds like negative, but it is kind of like changing the culture and the religious beliefs of the people, and just how that is something that the government doesn't take too kindly to. But yeah, it's a solid episode. I say it's about B tier. And then next we have Risky Racket, one of the best episodes ever. And this is, for a lot of people, I think this is where their first episode of like, oh, the show is actually like different, right? Like it hits you in a way that you don't expect, because I don't think anyone first time watching this episode, where you see this whole, they give you so much build up with Fu and this pickpocket, and of, you know, the potential like love and like connection, and it has that classic moment in any kind of story like that, where like the bad boy punk and like the girl who originally didn't like him but then comes around to him and is just like, I'll come back for you, or like find me when I'm whatever, and like you think he's gonna run away from the cops and make it, and then he gets cornered and Fu watches him get killed. It's like holy shit. That was really one of the first big moments of the show. I was like, yeah, this show really is just different and willing to do anything. And I feel like that episode and that moment is why I was so later in the show, and like the climax where Jean and Mugen looked like they were cooked, right? Mugen gets shot in the end and Jean gets stabbed. It's like, oh, they are willing to kill anybody. They're willing to kill these characters. So yeah, really important, really great episode. I think I would put it at I think it's better than Red Eye Reprisal, and I think there's an argument that it's better than the first episode, but for now I think I'll put it below the first episode. And so much of what makes it great is that ending, that like crazy plot twist. And the next episode is The Art of Altercation. And this episode is really funny until it's not. Until, the whole facade drops and the one guy, the guy who was pretending to be a servant of, the big rapper guy, when he reveals himself to be one of Gene's former students, or not students, but like fellow students under the same master. And you find out what Gene did to make himself like a runaway samurai, like a Ronin. And that's like a really crazy, like out of nowhere moment and really tense. And I also love Mugen's face when he sees the dude expose Gene and everything and like reveal his true intentions. And Mugen's just like loving it, like he's hamming it up. He's so interested. I don't know, it's one of like a quick thing I really like about this episode. But yeah, the episode itself is just, like I said, super funny. I really like the funnier episodes, especially like when the jokes land. They land really well. And yeah, I would say that it's an A-tier episode. I think it's also one of those episodes where like every character is doing something important, right? And they all have some big role to play in the episode. Yeah, I'd say it's an A-tier episode. And then we have Beatbox Bandits, which is really, really, really creative and funny idea. And I just want to say this because, I always seem to find a way to connect the Boondocks and Samurai Champloo in these videos. A lot of people gave me for how I felt about the Mr. Medicinal episode of the Boondocks, and I said it was the worst episode because it was a boring concept where the whole episode was about Granddad starting to smoke weed, and that was it. And people were just like, oh yeah, like you don't smoke. If you smoked, you understand, blah blah blah. You just hate weed or some stupid stuff like that. I love this episode. And this episode, the entire climax of this episode is basically like everybody got high and had a good time, which is funny because it's such a misdirection from how you think everything is going to go. Like you think, oh, Mugen had this mission to save his friends, to find this scroll. He failed, got kidnapped, and now everything's about to go, all hell's about to break loose. His friends are going to get killed at the stake. This army of like rebel former warriors are gonna go in and attack the village, blah blah blah. But then all the weed that they grew burns down, and then everyone gets super high and just has a great time for like 3 days or something, whatever the guy said. Yeah, great episode, definitely A tier. I'd say I'd put it like maybe like right below Bogus Booty. It's a solid episode. And then the last episode we have for Champloo, surprisingly, is and this episode I think is another A-tier episode. Like not quite amazing, but it's got some amazing moments. The fight between Mugen and the I always forget his name, but like the airbender swordsman, I'm just gonna call him that, with the crazy like monk powers. Yeah, like great episode, great fight. Multiple fights between them. It's one of the first times you see like supernatural things in the show, which is cool that they introduced that just a little bit. But again, that also leads to like how real is this? Like, is this just like a fake non-canon story, or did this really happen? It's good to see like Mugen push to his limits because he always comes up with creative ways to beat people. Yeah, this is a really solid episode. It's got good messages about like seeking those who seek ultimate power and just how that always corrupts, things like that. Yeah, and also this is the only time, like I've always loved this about Mugen's character, is that he's so strong, and so it seems so naturally strong. Like he plays baseball for the first time in his life, in the Baseball Blues episode, a sport he's never even heard of before that day. And after one day of training, he's the best baseball player on the field. Like, and he's the sole reason that they win the game, right? He's just like naturally gifted when it comes to like athletic things like that. So he never see him train or anything. Like Gene is the opposite. Like we see Gene's backstory and upbringing of him being a very disciplined, well-learned and trained, skilled samurai. But Mugen is just like, nah, I just naturally just fuck people up. And even his style is based on pure reaction, instinct, and athleticism. So to see him in this episode actually be forced to train to beat an opponent that he, otherwise couldn't, is just really like a funny kind of, I guess you could say like character growth moment for him. But yeah, this is a really good episode. I think it's even better than Beatbox Bandits. But yeah, so I think that is my tier list. I just want to take like one quick look over everything, make sure, like, I know I keep saying it, but like I always said that Gamblers and Gallantry is the best episode, but that was talking about each episode as one episode. If you just count the entire ending together as one, Evanescent Encounters as one episode, then that has to be the best episode in the show. But Gamblers and Gallantry, extremely close second. Lullabies of the Lost and Elegy of Entrapment are both like also amazing episodes. The first episode is amazing. Like that is a top 5. It's something I'm very comfortable with. I think those are all the top best episodes in the show. A Risky Racket is definitely up there as well. It's like maybe like a small step below. Like if there was another tier below S, like S and S plus or something, it would be like on S while the others are on S plus. But I just want to keep it. I'll just keep everything S. Red Eye Reprisal and Misguided Miscreants are also on that similar level. And then you have like the more like funnier filler episodes like Bogus Booty, Beatbox Bandits, The Art of Altercation, the Baseball Blues, and then also I don't think Lethal Lunacy is a funny episode, but I think it's still on that same level of like really, really good episodes that the show wouldn't be as good without. But I don't think they're on like quite S tier level. And then the B tiers are just kind of like episodes where I think there's nothing really bad I can say about them, but there's also not too many like great things I can say about them either. Like they're just kind of like, yeah, that was solid. Like hopefully the next episode's a little better, but that I have no issues with that episode. No major issues with that episode. And the C tier episodes like Unholy Union and War of the Words are definitely my least favorite. Those are episodes that whenever I rewatch the show, I'm just like, I might be just able to skip these. It's not like a big deal. But in some regards, especially Unholy Union, they have like important moments in the show, like Fu finally telling Mugen and Jean who the Sunflower Samurai is. So that's something that like kind of needs to be in the show. And then there's just the D tier, which is the recap episode, which as far as recap episodes go, pretty good. Like a lot of shows have very lazy approaches to recap episodes that are just blatant, like, yep, here's the past events. This one is just like, here's a small kind of thing that's happening in the story with them just relaxing and Mugen and Jean kind of talking about their adventures while they read Fu explaining how she feels about the adventures in her diary. Like it's all right. The Disorder Diaries. It's a fine episode, but definitely compared to the other true episodes, D tier. But yeah, so that's my list. Like I said, I have more Champloo videos in the works. It should be coming out soon. Where I really want to dive deeper into this show. I've already dived into like the specific characters of Mugen, Fu, and Jean, but now I just want to talk about some of the more like ancillary side characters and villains who also add to the show and make it, the masterpiece that I think it is. But yeah, no, thanks for watching, and talk to you in the next one.